Welcome to By Faith with Susie and Mike. This program is about regular people who've activated their faith and have done great things for the kingdom of God. When we move, God moves with us. What is God calling you to do today? By faith, obey His voice and enjoy the ride as He does things you could never imagine. Now here's your hosts, Susie and Mike.
Welcome to a special edition of By Faith with Susie and Mike. You know, for the next two programs, we're going to go through this brand new, and I mean brand new, book called No, Not Me. And we have Susie Jennings with us, who is the president and founder of Operation Care International and also the One Day Movement. And we're so excited, Susie, because we're going to really go through your book and your life. But what I like is we're going to be talking about God and how God was there in the beginning, the middle, the end, the whole way through, and how God has really been there. First off, before we even go on and we look at this book, No, Not Me. I want to hear a little bit about why did you pick that title?
Because that was my response to the Lord when He asked me, go under the bridge and help the homeless. So I said, no, not me, I'm not going. Because I did not like the homeless.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons you didn't like the homeless is because in your childhood, right, when you were growing up in the Philippines, your mom used to bring the homeless right into your kitchen. Tell us about your childhood and what it was like growing up in the Philippines.
Well, I'm one of 9 children, and my mother raised us in the church. My dad did not really know the Lord until later life. And so my mother was an amazing mom. I could say, a Proverbs 31 woman. She's now with the Lord, and she raised us in the knowledge of the Lord. And so she would have homeless in our kitchen. She would feed them, and she would give them jobs chopping wood. And then, so coming to America later, the Lord called me to a ministry I didn't want, and people I didn't even like. After my husband passed away, I asked God, what can I do for you? And He led me under the bridge in downtown Dallas and showed me the homeless living in cardboard boxes. And He told me, go under the bridge. And then I said, no, not me, because the homeless people I didn't like. They ate my food, occupied my space growing up in the Philippines.
Well, let's stay in the Philippines and let's talk about your mom more. You know, I love when you say a Proverbs 31 mom.
Yes.
We're going to take a look at some pictures of your mom here. Let's look at some of the pictures and just tell us about your mom. I know your mom was such an influence to you and also the ministry that you are now running. Tell us about your mom.
Oh, my mom was an amazing mom. She was extremely hard worker. And we remembered very well that she would wake up really early in the morning and then work hard, would go in the marketplace. She would raise piglets so she could sell it. And then she would, after she sells these piglets, she would also give a tithe to the Lord. So if the pig have 10 piglets, she would give one to the church for her tithe. And that's how we learned tithing of my mom. And mom worked very hard. She was also a dressmaker, an amazing dressmaker. And she have also helpers that help us with 9 children in the house. And the helpers stayed with my mom for about 30 years. And because she was an amazing woman of God, and she feared the Lord greatly, as just what the Bible said. A woman that fears the Lord would be praised.
So as a child, you know, you learn a lot. A lot of it's more caught than taught. That's what they say. So what did you see in your mom's life what drew you? How did you know that she had a real relationship with Jesus?
Because every night in the morning, she wakes up, she would pray. In the evening, she would kneel down and she would pray for her 9 children by name. And then she would tithe in the church, and that's where I learned really tithing in the church, like giving 10% of what I have and give it to the Lord. So I remember 5 girls would form in line here, and then my mom would give us 25 cents money, and then we would give it in the offering plate because mom taught us to give every Sunday to the church. And that's how mom taught me to be a tither and also to how to pray. And that when somebody asks you to pray, pray immediately, don't wait. And so my mom was really a legacy of prayer. That's what she really left to me.
Yeah, and I know a lot about your family, and it just seems that everyone that she raised was hard workers and really
Yes.
loves the Lord. And so you grew up, and you went to school, college, and then you come to America as a nurse. Tell us about those early days when you first came to the United States.
Well, I first came to United States. I came on September 9, 1982, and I was in church on Sunday. 4 days later, I was in church, and then I was working at Baylor on Monday. So I came on Thursday. By Monday, I was working at Baylor Hospital as a nurse because they hired me while I was in the Philippines, and that's how I got to America in Dallas. And I went to First Baptist Church immediately and became a member.
What was your job there as a nurse? What was your main job?
I came here as a nurse in different floors of Baylor Hospital. But in the Philippines, I was a recovery room nurse. I used to deliver babies, and then when I got to America, I was placed into different areas of the hospital, which was so new to me. I had to adjust to the food, the people, the climate, also the surroundings, the hospital. Immediately, I got here on Thursday. By Monday, I was working.
Yep. So here you are in America, right? And you're working at Baylor and going to First Baptist Dallas, and then you meet David. Tell us about how you met David.
Well, I met David in First Baptist Dallas evening service. And then we sat next to each other because he was my classmate in Sunday school. But I really didn't meet him in Sunday school, but I met him in the worship service on the evening. So we sat next to each other, and I have a classmate, same classmate with his classmate. Her name is Pam. And Pam sat, she told me sit next to David. And then I sat next to David. And then when the hymns was singing, I memorized the hymns because there's the same hymns that we were singing in the Philippines. And David was so amazed that I memorized all the songs. And he said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "Philippines." And then he said, "Why do you know all the songs?" I said, "Well, it's the same hymn now that we're using in the Philippines."
Yeah. By the way, we're talking here with Susie Jennings, who's the author of No, Not Me. There's going to be an incredible celebration at the Gaylord Texan here in Dallas, Texas in June as this book is launched. But we have the privilege today of sitting down with her and going through the book. And, the part about memorizing hymns is in this book, and it really caught my attention. So, David, here you are. This is sort of like your first, would you say, date? Was it your first date?
Oh, first date. Oh, yes. First date, I was living with my roommate, Emily. And so David was such a gentleman that he called Emily and asked permission if he could date me. So Emily became like a mom. And so I remembered our first date. I never had a date before. David was my first date ever. And I was 25 years old. Never had a date. So we went on a date. I didn't know how to do it. So I would go out from the car, and he said, "Oh, Susie, allow me to open the door for you." And then he would sit me in the chair, and just such a gentleman. And it was kind of cold. He took off his jacket and gave it to me. So that was David, very gentleman, and asked permission from my roommate before he could date me.
Yeah. At what point did you know that David might be the one? Like, at what point in your relationship as you were dating did you go, "Wow, this guy might be the love of my life"?
Well, actually, we met in January, and then on April 13 was my birthday. So on my birthday, he gave me a lapis lazuli jewelry, a necklace from Bethlehem. And he told me later on that he said he was thinking that he would only give it to the woman that he would marry, but I did not know that when it was given to me. So I kind of, by April, I kind of know that he would be the guy. He was a very gentle man, always caring and loving to people. And he was like a mother hen, wherein he would like to take care of the people that are not, probably like some that are mentally challenged and some that are homeless and poor. Those
Yeah.
are the people.
We're taking a look at some of the pictures. That was your
That was
wedding.
my wedding.
Let's look at another one.
I was in Hawaii.
That was when you went to Hawaii. You know, one thing in this book about David, we'll take a look at some pictures of David as we talk about him, is he was a fan of the underdog.
Yes.
And there's a story in No Not Me. You can get this book at Amazon.com. And there's a story in here that really touched my heart. When David, you guys were on a date, you were at a diner, and David saw somebody there who we would say an underdog, and it was what the waiter or waitress was talking with him. And tell us about that story. It's in No Not Me, and it's a real powerful story.
Well, the guy was ordering something and needed some help, and the manager was not very helpful. And so David stood up, and he was the one who took care of it. And it really bothered him if people are not treated well. And that's where I really learned also, because remember, it was also a training for me that the homeless were coming to my house and I didn't like them. But then I saw David later that really were taking care of the homeless and the poor, that it opened up my heart towards the homeless. Because what I said, I didn't care for them, because one homeless also slapped me in the Philippines when I was a little girl. So that added to my dislike, not knowing that one day God will use my mother's kitchen to change me.
Yeah. So here you go. You fall in love with David and you get married, right? And you guys are starting to build a life together. And then you notice at some point along the journey that he's suffering from something, depression, anxiety, some type of mental illness. At what point did that come in?
Well, we went to the Philippines because my daddy had a stroke. And when we were there, David would read the Bible to my dad for 5 days. And then after that, he came back to America ahead of me. And then when I got back to America later on, because I stayed longer in the Philippines, when I got back to America, I saw that David was not sleeping well, and he was having diarrhea 20 times a day. And he was not just the same, and he lost about 20 pounds very quickly. Then we took him to the doctor, and he was diagnosed that he had a chemical imbalance called serotonin deficiency that caused severe depression.
So how many years do you think he suffered with this mental illness?
He probably had been suffering, but he probably was masking it. So I didn't even realize. It took about 3 years before we knew that he had depression.
Then there's a point in time where David, I guess things have escalated to a point where he goes missing. You come home one day, and it's in this book. You come home and David is not home. What did you think at that point?
Well, it started on that same day. I woke up, and then I knew that something was wrong, because a day before, David was so mad at a person in the phone, a banker, because our mortgage was changed. So he was mad that he did not know it. So I could sense that this is not normal for him to really be mad. So I told him, we need to go back to your psychiatrist. And that kind of upset him. So on the next day when we woke up, I knew something was really wrong. And I told him, I said, honey, we need to go back. And he said, no. He said, I'm not going to any place, but I'm going out of town where nobody knows me, and I'm going to start life again. So
you were home.
Yes.
And he was missing.
I was home.
And what were you, tell me about that time, because that must have been really rough. I know in the book, No Not Me, which you can get at Amazon.com, it's launching actually this June. Exciting, incredible book. By the way, it has a 10-week Bible study at the end of it that your church can go through. And I encourage you to get this book. So tell us about that season, Susie, when David was missing and you had to really, really press into God because you didn't know where your husband was. And how did the book of Psalms, how did that season of when David was missing, how did you lean into God?
Well, that was a very dark days for me when David was missing, not knowing where he went. And at the same time, that was a moment where I was clinging to the Lord. And I would read Psalms every day. And Psalms would come to life, like the verse would come to life. So the Lord gave me a verse in Psalms 30, verse 5 that said, weeping may endure for a night, joy comes in the morning. And that was the verse I was holding on. And that gave me hope that, there's joy, and I was hoping David would come home. So he disappeared on that same day when he said he's gonna leave. He left because he told me go to work. So I left the house, and then when I came back, actually I didn't really go to work. I went to 7-Eleven to call my mother-in-law. I needed somebody to be with me. So when we went back to the house, he was gone.
Yeah.
And that's when he was missing for 30 days.
So speaking of needing somebody to be there during a season like this, one of the amazing things in No Not Me that really touched my heart was that God knew that you needed your mom, the mom from the Philippines, the Proverbs 31 mom. And your mom actually comes back to the United States and is with you during this season, this tough season. Tell us about your mom coming back.
Well, actually, my mother was in the Philippines, and then she came back. 2 weeks before David disappeared, the Lord knew exactly what I needed. The Lord sent a neighbor living in LA to go home to the Philippines, and then she offered to take my mom back to America. And so mom came back here 2 weeks before David disappeared. My mother was back in America. So that's exactly how you could tell that the Lord is with you even in the midst of the storm. He knows what you need.
Now, didn't you have a dream right in the middle of the time that he was missing, when you were basically asking God, David, where are you? What happened? And God actually spoke to you, right, Susie, through a dream?
That happened after we found David.
After you found David.
Yes.
So let me go back, because this is important. So when he's missing, one day somebody knocks on the door, and it's an
Yes.
unexpected visitor, and it was the detective.
Detective.
Yeah.
The detective came about 28 days later, and he said they found the car of David because he was missing. They found it in Atoka, Oklahoma, and that's where we went to Atoka, and that's where we found David. And David had been dead for 30 days. When we found him, he committed suicide. He shot himself in the head, and we found him because of the car that was found by the farmer who owned the area there in Atoka. It's like a hilly part of Atoka.
When you actually found David and found his body, there's a part here in No Not Me where when you actually said, "Oh, David, tell us about this part," and you sort of fell down, and then you called out to God, and you sort of got, the way I would describe it is, you got a supernatural strength from God.
Well, when we found David, I was so mad. I was not mad at God, but I was mad at David, because I questioned David. Why, David? Why? We're supposed to grow up together. When we grow old, we need to be together. And then I said, you left me. I was mad. And then I just remembered turning around, because I saw the body about 100 feet from me. They found the body. The police found the body. And I turned around and I fell to the ground and I just screamed, "Why, David, why?" I was mad at David, but never at God.
Right. And then you actually called out to God, right? And you got a supernatural strength from God.
I called out to God. I went to the top of the hill, and then I just screamed. I said, "God, give me strength." And then the Lord, I remembered somebody, it feels like two people lifted me in my armpit, then lifted me, and I felt like I was off, like 1 foot off the ground, because I was asking God, "Lord, give me strength, give me strength." And immediately God gave me the strength, and I felt like I was walking in a cloud, and then the Lord gave me the peace. This was after we found David's body, and he had been dead for 30 days. We believe that he committed suicide on March 9, 1993. We found him on April 8, 1993.
So also, one thing you wrote in the book that really hit home was the hymns that you were memorizing years, maybe decades before. Now, all of a sudden, when you're in the back seat of that car, those very hymns that you memorized came back to you, right? And they brought some kind of comfort in this really, really dark place.
Actually, it's the same hymns that we were singing the first time I met David in the church. We were singing "Great is Thy Faithfulness" and "It Is Well With My Soul." Those were the hymns I sang when we were coming back to Dallas after finding David's body. We took his car back, so that my pastor was driving the car, and I was at the back, and then another pastor was in the front, and I was singing the same hymn.
So this was truly a season of brokenness and despair for you. You had lost your husband through suicide, and but you were right on the eve of your calling and purpose, which eventually we're going to talk about, which is Operation Care International and the Christmas party. So what is amazing to me is talk about that season, those weeks in between after David died, your mom's back at home with you, and you're mourning, you're pressing into God. What was that season like for somebody that's going through a very, very dark season right now, almost where it feels hopeless? What would you say to that person today?
Well, for me, I didn't have any place to go but on my knees. I would kneel down, and then just the presence of my mother there. There were times I would lie down on the bed with my mom. I just wanted to feel her skin next to me. We did not talk. So we did not talk, but just having my mom there, the Lord knew exactly I would need my mother.
Yeah. And during that season, I mean, a lot of people say we know the verse, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and He saves those crushed in spirit. Susie, I know you had gotten strength from God Himself during those times. Tell me that one time you're in the shower. Remember, you described it. You actually describe it in this book very powerfully. But something happened in the shower.
Yes, I was taking a shower. This was after a few weeks after David was buried. And then while I was taking a shower, I felt like the shower were my tears. And it gave me comfort also knowing that I could call on God. And He would usually immediately, He would remind me that God is with me. The Bible said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So I was holding on to God's promises. So the Lord became closer to me.
So that moment, Susie, where Psalm 35 came, where you said, weeping endures, but joy comes in the morning. When was that? How far down the road was that after David passed?
Well, that verse had been very real to me in 30 days when he was missing. So I was clinging to that verse, and up to now, that's still my verse.
Right. So one morning you woke up and you said, I'm going to intentionally choose joy. And then you ask God, and this is where this book, No, Not Me, really comes in.
Yeah.
God, what can I do for you? You really had a path there. You could have went this way or that way. Talk about the importance of somebody in a very dark season today, why you have to intentionally choose joy.
Well, because I know that the Lord will always be with me, because that's the promise. Because I also sense when David was missing, the Lord was so close to me. The verses in the Bible became real to me. And the prayer, the Lord always would send someone there in times of when I needed someone, the Lord will send somebody knocking in my door. And that's how I knew God is always with me. And so I decided, I had the faith to trust the Lord, because I saw it in my mother's me growing up, seeing my mother's faith. And so that really gave me a closer relationship to the Lord. So in the midst of trouble and trials, that's when I really grow in loving the Lord.
So what ends up happening next is really incredible. What happens is that Susie makes a prayer to God and says, God, what can I do for you? And we're going to be talking the next program about what God told her to do. You're not going to believe it. What Susie's answer was first, and then what happened after, and how it led to a party at the Dallas Convention Center in Dallas, which now for 17 years has been running, which is the largest event in the world that honors Jesus Christ on His birthday in honor of the homeless and those in poverty. So next, on our next show, you're going to hear the turning point when Susie, really her road to Damascus. So we'll be back next time on this special edition of By Faith.